Hello all, and welcome to the first of what I guess I'm going to call driving story time. Don't have a huge amount of time to be able to kind of put out this kind of content, but why not? I got this GoPro to use, hook it up to my car, we see how it works. So today's story time is one that has been highly requested by many of the people in the subreddit, and this is the time where I ate 60 synthetic legal magic mushroom gummies. 60. Yeah, suffice to say, it was indeed an experience. So, for context, these gummies are by the brand Tre House. I have several reviews on my page about Tre House. If you have more questions about the specifics of that, I recommend you watch those videos. Can't go into too many details here due to TOS, but for the simplicity of things, these are essentially just synthetic legal magic mushrooms. Same general effects, same general principles. So keep that in mind for this story. So why 60? Under what circumstance would you ever consider consuming 60? Well, for any of you who are familiar with tryptamine psychedelics, you will know that tolerance is a big factor to you being able to consistently redose. Typically with tolerance, you're going to have to wait about 7+ days for it to reset to a point where it's going to be normal. So if you're trying to trip consecutive days, you have to up the dose on the following day considerably more than the original. So with the Tre House gummies, the active ingredient in each of the pack of the gummies feels about on par with like a 2.5 to 3 gram mushroom trip. Each pack themselves have the 15 gummies. So I mean, you can do your math in your head. It's in theory an incredibly deranged heroic trip. And it very much felt like it. Why I decided to go with 60 is because the day prior I had done 30. Typically, you're going to want to double it if you're going to try to do back-to-back. And this is just one of those, like, see how many you can take. You know, it was kind of a curiosity thing. So, when you use psychedelics, there are kind of two mentalities that people have as far as, like, actually wanting to, you know, manage dosing and not, you know, barfing. And that is either you consume the magic mushrooms or the synthetic stuff on a completely empty stomach, or you do it with food. For me, I found that doing it with food is basically guaranteeing a terrible time of nausea, so I will try to consume them with nothing. But obviously, if you're eating 60 fucking gummies, yeah, it has a... It gives you a rock gut sensation that truly nothing on earth has ever come close to. So here I am. I'm out here starting to take the gummies at about 8 p.m. And with the Tre House gummies, they taste rancid. Most of them taste absolutely abysmal. So you're not chewing the gummies, you're swallowing them. It's the only way you're going to get that shit done quickly and efficiently without you wanting to constantly retch. It is what it is. You do what you gotta do. You do what you gotta do. So my typical strategy is I line them up in rows of 5. And you just down a row of 5 really quickly, take a pause, get some drink, down another row of 5. And so here I am doing that for 60 gummies. And it's taking a while. I would say that just the process of consuming the gummies themselves took like an hour, because it was just so unpleasant. So I popped the 5, you know, wait a bit, take a drink, popped another 5. But the problem with it taking that long is by the point that you're like halfway to like 3/4 deep of you swallowing the 60 fucking gummies, you start getting the come up nausea. So now you're fighting it even harder to keep it down. And eventually, after a long struggle of 1 hour of slamming these gummies, I'm good, they're in me, and I'm laying in bed, not wanting to move because the nausea at this point is very intense. What I found is while tolerance will affect the positive side effects of the psychedelics, you know, the things that you're actually looking for, tolerance does not seem to affect the nausea. It has to do with how your body breaks down the chemical. So taking 60 is feeling like you're taking 60 as far as like nausea and some of the like panic. Definitely cannot recommend that to anybody else unless you're extremely prepared. So here I am laying in bed, borderline like retching. I've got the puke bucket next to me. Didn't end up throwing up, but it was a real fight. And so now the come up is for the most part completed, and I've entered into a phase of the trip that I like to call the gap. The gap is this point of a trip that tends to only occur if you are frequently redosing or you're taking not enough to get you into like the real breaking through territory, right? And so what makes the gap very frustrating and ominous is you have some of the minor positive side effects of the trip, but the predominant sensation is an anxiety of anticipation. Like something's gonna happen. You know, it's the kind of anxiety of like, you took a test and you're waiting to get the results on the test. You know it's gonna happen, but you don't know when. And it's this really weird gap, you know, where you're kind of stuck in this limbo phase. And this continued for far longer than it normally does. Normally the gap, if you're gonna get it, is only gonna be typically between the 2 and 3 hour mark of consumption. This was starting to push into like, it was coming towards like midnight. And it was still in the gap phase, and this was starting to kind of worry me. I'm like, well, what the fuck? Like when you're on these heroic doses, you routinely will feel like you are actively dying during the come up. So when you go through that sensation of you feeling like you are dying, and now all of a sudden you just have this like manic anticipatory anxiety for hours, it's a very not great thing. You can kind of smoke, you can smoke indica cannabis in order to kind of like dull the anxiety, or it'll make it worse. It's very person specific. And so I'm waiting, and then what happens is what I call the click. A click is a point on a trip in which you go from mostly having your shit together to suddenly, abruptly, it being incredibly intense, dramatically so. And so the click happens, and it's just like it went from very minimal, like maybe the sensation of like a 1.5 gram trip, and now it's just right there from like a 6 to 9 gram trip instantaneously. And it was just this like really, really intense, powerful, like fully incapacitating, crazy trip. Like visuals were off the walls, fully immobilized, staring at the ceiling, listening to music, and it just hits you like that. The click happens. And this state of like extremely profound, like ominous dread sensation washes over you. But I found that with these kind of trips, if you engage in activities that are very comforting, you can kind of shift it out of that. So I listened to more of the music I kind of like. I started to get into the mood, and now I'm fucking hype. And so while I'm indeed like fully incapacitated, again, like I'm just laying in bed, like having hot flashes, just laying there listening to music, but I was fucking hyped for it. And then probably the single most intense shroom euphoria kicks in, and it is just this magical sensation, and it continues for hours. Normally these trips, again, it's like a 3 to 8 hour experience. Now it comes to like 3 a.m. and a second click happens, and it's just total, profound, heroic dose all there. It was as if the giant lump of gelatinous gummy nonsense in my gut just detonated in a single go, and everything just seeped out rapidly. And suffice to say, yeah, I fell asleep almost instantly. This was one of those heroic trips to where if you get to a certain threshold, you are unconscious. And so this shit made me go to sleep rapidly. And yeah, I fucking passed out. Like, I just fully fell asleep. This was one of those to where it wasn't like a hard pass out where like you have no control of it. It was kind of like oh, I'm super sleepy now, it's sleepy time, and then fell asleep instantaneously. I had some of the most insane vivid dreams possible, and the next day I woke up totally fine. Amazing afterglow, no major drama, totally fine. So yeah, that's what happens when you eat 60 synthetic shroom gummies. Yeah, you will have a giant detonation of gelatinous energy in your gut, and then you will go night-night. So hope you enjoyed that one. Expect more coming. I got more wacky Hiroto stories, but that'll conclude this one for now. Do not under any circumstance consume 60 Tre House gummies unless you either A, have a death wish, which I kind of fell into that category, or B, are incredibly experienced. I'll leave it at that.